Hey YouTubers, here's a little story about an Arctic cat that we picked up about 3 years ago. This machine has about 800 kilometers on it, and just recently on a ride she started knocking really loud. My first thought was maybe we threw a rod, but I didn't want to panic just yet, so we brought it back to my shop here. Here's my shop, quote, garage, disaster, hurricane zone, just like most people. So anyways, we got it here and we pulled it all apart. I was hoping maybe a belt came apart, and maybe that's what we heard flapping around inside the housing. So we pulled it all apart, and nope, everything's nice and clean here. A little bit of mud because we do get a little bit deep, as you can see by the grizzly. That's my machine. This is kind of a funny machine. It's a bit of a community machine. It belongs to a friend of mine. We store it here for him, and his storage fee is letting anybody that comes up to visit ride it, when we go out in the trails. So anyways, back to this story. Belt was fine. The one-way clutch seems to be okay. Nothing special happening here. I've pulled the plug so I can turn it this way. No problem. Of course, now that I've done that, I got to find top dead center again. So the more I worked on it, the more I was starting to panic a little bit, thinking, oh, we're going to have to split the cases. So long story short, I pulled the air box off it. I'm like, all right, well, let's check the valves. Maybe we bent a valve. So here you have where I've covered up the valves because it's still a little bit muddy in here. And ta-da, here's our valve train. So as soon as I opened this up, nothing really stood out at me. It seemed everything seemed to be in place. The chain's nice and tight. There's no debris in here. There was a little bit of valve lash on the intake side, so I'll probably have to adjust those valves up once I get to that point. What I found was kind of odd. So this here is what we call the decompression lobe of the cam. Now that I've rotated it, I can't get to it, so I'll rotate it back around. So what happens is, you'll see this little pin here. When the engine spins fast enough, this will lift up and flatten out that lobe. And what this does is allow you to start the engine. It releases compression on the bottom of the lobe when the engine turns over so that it can actually start without burning up the starter motor. What happened was, this little cam here, this lobe, actually dislodged itself. And that was very odd. As you can see, there's a ton of play in here, kind of indicative of something made in China. Just for you guys that don't know, this Arctic Cat 500 is actually a Kimco 450 engine. So I managed to pop that back on where it's supposed to be, and that seems to be all that caused it. So what happened was, when this little doodad there dislodged itself, smacking, I don't think you'll be able to see it. It was smacking right here. Probably kind of dark, sorry. I'm just getting this is my first real video. It was smacking this cam, this part of the head here. There was a little bit of aluminum filing there. I'm hoping none of it got into any of the journals or anything. My bigger concern is maybe with that hitting that, it might be putting pressure on the cam and maybe could have damaged the bearings on the cam. I don't see any scoring, so I'm not going to panic too much about it. And it's an Arctic Cat, so I'm not going to kill myself trying to get this thing all apart. So yeah, so it was hitting here. That was the noise I was hearing. And if I take you over to where the valve cover is, I'll try not to drop these silly screws. Let's see here. A little bit of light. Where was it hitting? I gotta remember how this was. It'll be over here. So right there. You'll see that little mark here. Sorry. Let's see. So you may be able to see a little mark here where it's kind of indented a bit. I'm going to flush out the oil system. I'll probably actually, what I'd like to do is I'll pour a little fresh oil into the head here and let it drain down into the pan and then drain the oil out of the machine. But that seems to be all the problem here. One thing I would suggest for anybody that's doing this, is run into a similar problem, just take all the bloody plastic off. I think I created more headache than I saved by not taking this plastic off. There's a ton of bolts and screws holding it all together, but trying to get your hands, I'm a pretty scrawny little dude, so I can get my hands in here not too badly. Anybody that's average size, you're just going to be struggling. The biggest challenge was getting this hose off the intake and the coil assembly, which I've left hanging here, and yeah, might damage wires, whatever, I'll fix it if I do. I probably shouldn't leave the coil dangling like that if you're a little more motivated than I am. As you can see, I got mud way up here, so this machine's been buried a few times. But in my mind, this sort of stupidity shouldn't happen in any machine. I'm concerned that this is not normal play, and we may end up replacing that cam. But I think we're just going to bolt the bugger back together and see how she runs. If it happens again, then I'm just going to order a new cam. Not really a big job to pull this apart. If I knew what I was doing, I probably could have had this done in an hour. But I've been kind of working on and off on it for a couple of days. Taking a little piece off here, a little piece off there, and then getting distracted by family. So here we are. Give you guys an idea. If you hear a loud knocking noise on the top of the engine, first clue if it's the top of the engine, it's definitely not a rod. But you might want to look at that. I'm wondering if this is something that'll come up with these Kimco motors. Or I could just go, a crappy cam. So there we are. I hope this helps anybody out there. Just so you know, you can turn the crank with this nut, and this is where your inspection cover is to find the timing mark for top dead center. So you're going to see there's on this machine, it's just a straight line. It's not a letter or anything on the flywheel here. And if you come around to where the cam is, now we've moved it, so geez, I don't know, can you see it maybe? There's two marks here. So top dead center on this machine is, with these marks, parallel to the top of the head, and the timing mark on the flywheel visible, and that gives you top dead center. This will come into play when we try to adjust these valves, and I might throw that into this video as well. And I'm betting I'm going to take all these plastics off to do that timing adjustment, because I can't see how you can get your fingers in there to do it. It's pretty crazy. Anyways, I'll put you on pause and get started on this. Alright, so I'm working on getting this plastic off. It was a little bit more of a chore than I thought. I ran into a bit of a snag here, and maybe somebody can comment on the way around it. This side I managed to get the 3 screws out. 1, 2, 3 locations there. A bit of fiddling trying to support the screw because you can't get a ratchet in there. I think the design here is that you would lift off the rear fender and front fender as one complete unit. I'm a bit of a loner, so trying to do that by myself didn't seem really feasible. And I don't want to strip off this back seat that we put on because it was a bit of a pain in the backside as well. But I have run into an issue here. Don't know if you can see. I might have to, I'm going to throw some light on the subject here. Bear with me while I find my light. There it is. Now, this light's kind of bright. I don't know if it'll wash it out. Is it too much or not enough? It seems to be the story of my life. There you go. So there's those 3 nuts there. And for the life of me, I can't figure out how you're supposed to take those out other than removing the back of this as one unit. I don't know if anybody's got some tips for the other watchers out there, but feel free to comment on it if anybody actually even watches this video. So I'm stuck on these 3. I've got all the other bolts out. So you can see we've done some plastic repair on this machine, and I got some more to do. And the owner of the machine Did not see a log sticking out into the trail, and damn near impaled himself, and definitely impaled the fender. Missed his stomach by probably 2 inches by the time he got her stopped. So this machine's been abused a little bit. It's been rolled once by the owner, and our other buddy there was the one that rotated this cam. Now that happened, this engine had been running, we run 75, 85 kilometers an hour, so I'd say, what, 50 mile an hour for extended periods, and this happened probably about an hour into of that high speed run. So we'll see how she holds together, but I just thought I'd show you the challenges I'm having getting this plastic off. I'm beginning to wonder if it was worth the effort. I think it is. Realistically, I've got 15-20 minutes into getting the plastic off, and I'm down to these last 3 bolts. I may end up taking this whole back section off as well, just to give myself room to get at those nuts and bolts, because I don't see any other way of getting to them. And the other side was challenging, but the other side doesn't have a gas tank in the way. Look at the mud. Like I said, we routinely get up to the handlebars in the mud here. So, and for what it's worth, the Arctic Cat has kept up with the Grizzly, and the Grizzly has kept up with a Polaris 850. But my buddy has a Can-Am, I think it's like a 1000, that smokes all of us, but with big 30-inch tires. This guy's got 26s, the Grizzly has 27s. So as you can imagine, the guys in the 30s are going a little deeper than we are. I'm going to shut the camera off again and get the rest of this plastic off. And we'll come back to this when I start putting the valve cover back on. I'm going to try and edit out all my ums and ahs and my snuffling, because I have a bit of a summer cold for some reason. Comes with being skinny, I guess. Crappy immune system. 4 main bolts around the seat. So yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. It was a bit of a squeeze. 1, 2, 3, 4. Bit of a squeeze to get my hands in here with a little wrench. A 13 millimeter top and bottom. So that holds the fender on. And then it occurred to me there was only 2 little bolts left, so I managed to take the whole seat off. So you have 1 little bolt here and 1 here, both 10 mils. Also, you have a 2 T25s for the battery cover with the tools on top. I put them up over there. I don't know if you can see them. So I ended up just pulling the battery out. I figure I'll give it a charge. It sat most of the winter, and since I'm doing all this work, I may as well charge the battery. So now it looks like, any luck at all, I can lift all this up enough. Oh, look at that. Get the gas cap off, light a match, we're good to go. Should be able to lift this up enough now that I can take those 3 bolts out and take the back fender off, and then I'll take the front assembly off as well. Jury's still out. Don't know if it's really worth all this bloody effort. Take the plastic off. I could just squeeze my hands in there. I will say I had a terrible time getting the airbox out with the plastics in place, only because of that front tube. They have a ring here that goes around this tube, steel threaded ring, you know. I forget what they call it now. A hose clamp. And of course, the screw was facing down. So, I mean, I don't know. I guess you could probably pull all this crap out to get at it, but you can't with the airbox in place, and you can't get this out. So I couldn't get at it. I just fought and fought and fought. Realistically, for the amount of effort, I may as well have just taken all the bloody plastics off. And I'm pretty sure that anybody who works on these on a regular basis would have done that before doing anything else. Kind of foolish on my own part, but again, I'm a little bit mechanically inclined, but I am not a mechanic, and I don't do this for a living. We're just I'm doing the maintenance on and repair on these machines because there are no local shops to us, and neither of my friends are really mechanically inclined. And these things, I mean, if I do something wrong, the parts aren't horribly expensive unless I throw a rod and have to replace the crank assembly or something like that, then it gets a bit pricey. I think that cam assembly is something like 55 bucks. The only challenge is I have no shops nearby, so it would be weeks to get one. And we're hoping to have this ready for the long weekend. So I've got some more videos coming, probably on my buddy's channel, not necessarily mine, because, well, nobody watches me anyways. But we have this going. That Grizzly actually needs quite a bit of repair, maintenance, not repair. The valves need to be adjusted, and I gotta look at the airbox. It's running really rich for some reason. I've been told that's normal for those. And if you look way back there, you'll see my little blue car there. Any enthusiast will know exactly what it is, and a lot of people that aren't enthusiasts will know exactly what it is. I have plans for that car. It's still fairly new, so we'll see where it goes. Another engine we got to work on here is that Craftsman lawnmower that's probably 20 some years old. I've been able to keep that engine running like a top. Unfortunately, the chassis is kind of coming apart on it. It is all just stamped steel. But I got some work I got to do on that thing again. So we might make some videos of that. And I digress. But we also, it looks like a buddy of mine are going to do some challenges with PCs and building and doing stuff like that. As you can tell, I'm more of a mechanical person, but it should be kind of fun too. So anyways, back to work on this thing. I'm going to take the rest of these plastic off, and then I'll probably set up the camera somewhere as I start to put things back together as far as the valves and everything. Okay, well, there she is. Strip all the plastics off. Not a horrible job. If you got small hands, it was alright. Certainly gives us a ton of room to work here. So I'm going to call it worth the effort if you're sick of getting your knuckles skinned here. So anyways, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into this. I put this tie wrap here to hold the throttle cable out of the way. This cover doesn't have a gasket in it. They just use an RTV sealant of some sort. I picked up a Permatex Ultra Silver, or Ultra Gray. I think it's called Ultra Gray. I'm going to put a bead of that around there. Oh, it's over here somewhere. There we go. There we go. Ultra Gray. So I'm going to put a very thin bead around. First I'm going to take some acetone. I'm going to clean these surfaces around here so that the sealant actually seals. And I'll do the same on the valve cover itself, clean that up. And I'm going to put a thin bead on the inside, probably in along here. There's a seal that comes up in here, drops in there, but I'll probably silicone around this seal a little bit, staying away from the bearing surface. And usually when I do stuff like this, I'll do the bead along here, but I'll also go around the bolt. Probably completely unnecessary and maybe even not recommended, but that's what I do. So that's going to be my next project. Like I said, I'm going to pour a little bit of grease. I'm going to pour a little bit of fresh oil down in here, just kind of hopefully draw everything down into the sump, and then I'll drain it out. I'm going to put a new spark plug in it. The plug I pulled out isn't terrible. I've got it over here with my Grizzly plug. So that's this one here. Looks pretty green, pretty good. Maybe a tiny bit rich, but I mean that electro is pretty darn clean. So I think she's running pretty good, other than the little fiasco with that decompression cam. So I think I'll set up the camera here. I'm going to clean off this surface. I'll set up the camera while I'm putting this together, and everybody can make comments about how I'm doing it wrong. Doesn't really matter, because it'll be done by the time you watch it, and it'll stay that way until it blows up again. So there we are. Alrighty, looks like it's buttoning up time. So, thing I noticed here, this threaded hole, and this threaded hole filled with oil. It's something you want to keep in mind. when you're putting your threaded screws in here, these are bottomed out. That oil could cause the bolt to strip out. So what I did was I gently threaded the bolts in by hand to squeeze that oil out of there. Particularly if you're using an impact driver or something like that, you can feel it when you do by hand. The oil will push back, and you'll actually strip these threads out, or even blow the bottom of this threaded area out. So you want to make sure you get all the oil out of these holes. So here I am with the ultra gray. I'm going to try and do this. I'm pretty shaky. I haven't eaten yet today, so I should probably stop and eat. Get her started. It's very thin. Okay. Like I said, I cleaned this surface off with some acetone so that I get a good adhesion. There's your $10 word for the day. You're not going to use very much. Again, there's no gasket on here, and it's because as that gasket compresses, and this is my theory, so not gospel, as it compresses, it's going to change your valve clearance, because the valve assembly is actually attached to the valve cover. So you'll want to keep an eye on this spacing. I'm trying not to use too much of this, and I'm not doing a very good job of it. So again, there's that seal that's here. I'm trying to stay away from the cam bearing surface. So this here is probably the most important on the inside of those screw holes. And it's not sticking with crap. Go figure. So I'm getting a little too thick on here, I'm pretty sure. But it's the best I can do. And again, I like to go around the outside of these. Probably doesn't make any difference at all, other than it's going to increase the gap on the lifters. But yeah, whatever. This is what happens when you get a buddy to do mechanic work for free. Well, not entirely free. They can only make a couple of cases of beer. So, across here, you can see I'm shaking like a leaf. I should probably eat something. Wow, I'm putting this on way too thick. Okay, keyboard warriors, hit me with it. Oopsie, on the valve spring. I've got a bit of an angle on here. I do a fair bit of caulking at work, so it's kind of habit to cut an angle on my nozzle. Probably not helping me at all. Weird little oil galley there around that threaded area. I don't know why. Keep it thin so it doesn't get into the bearing surface, like I say. And it'll probably leak like a sieve. C'est la vie. That's it. Excuse me. These glasses I got suck. That's thick. Keeping it towards the outside edge because I am putting it on a little too thick here. There you go. This stuff has about a 20-minute work time, so I gotta be pretty quick with it before it skins over. It's gonna be an unholy mess when I put the top on. So as you can see, valve train, roller rockers, fancy, not bad for China. All attached to the valve cover assembly. I cleaned all the surfaces, like I said. Also, I pulled out the bolts, the head bolts, valve cover bolts, and assembled them on my workbench in the order that they came out, so that they go back in the same spot. there are guides in some of these holes, so that you can't really screw it up. So I'm sure I will. And there we go. So that's on now. As you can see, I haven't bolted it down, but there was a ton of play on the intake side. Not sure why. I put the center ones in. I'm probably going to torque them starting from the center and working my way out. I'll probably do it in a cross pattern. Just seems like the right thing to do. My light's kind of off-centered here. So the video production on this will probably be crap because it's my first video. If anybody wants to jump in and do a video for me, have at her. Actually, one of my buddies will be doing on future videos, and like I say, it'll probably end up on his channel. Okay, so that was something a little interesting I noticed there. These two, in case you mix up your screws, these two here are going to be longer than these two. Weird, but they are, slightly, by about 1/4 of an inch. So I'm just finger tightening them down. I'm going to go and snug them up with my wrench. Then I'll come back with my torque wrench. They're supposed to be 8 foot-pounds. And I wonder if I can get these ones in. Yep, okay. And make sure these are 10 mil. Maybe 8. Okay, so again, cross pattern. As you can see, some of the early ones loosened off as I tightened down the outside ones. So I'm just doing them small ratchet, 1/4 inch drive by hand. Now we'll break out the torque wrench. It's kind of a cheapy torque wrench. Wouldn't bet my life on it. So I'm going to go a little bit by feel. Yeah, I don't like this at all. This is 8 foot-pounds. I'm going to back it off, this thing off to 7 and just see. And I screwed up. Alright, if you remember, I moved this off the top dead center. That might be part of my problem. Lesson learned, find top dead center. Before you button it back together. Maybe I did. There. Those valves are up. tiny bit of play there. Intake is super tight. Okay. Alright, here we go. So I've already set this valve. The spec is 0.08 at 0.12 millimeters. I've set it to 0.1 even, kind of dead center. So this is a 0.13 and it's not going in. So it tells me I'm not too loose. And if I could dig it out, my 0.1 should be right here. Might be a lot of background noise around a bit of a thunderstorm. So you have to forgive me. And here's 0.1 millimeters. It's a little snug, but I can get it in there. There we go. It's a little snug on 0.1, so I think we're good. For giggles, let's see what my next size here is. Okay, so we'll do a 0.8 the minimum. See how tight the 0.8 is. Nice and loose. So here you go. So we're right in there. I think 0.1 is a good number to go for. But I say and a lot. Go figure. So I had there's a special tool for these. These are like a square nut on the top. It could be about, oh, I don't know, like 2 mil. Unfortunately for me, I do not have a 2 mil. So what I use, some snap ring pliers to hold the center stud, and a 9 mil socket through a nut, the jam nut. And this bugger was super tight, so I'm going to make it super tight. So, and you'll see with this one, watch this one be loose. I actually had to use the open end because my box end is a 12 point. And it wanted to try and round the nut off, which would have been bad news. And this throttle cable is a pain in the nuts. You may want to remove it, and you're doing this yourself. So, as you can see, that's on there, good and tight. So I've got my 1 mil. I've backed it off so it's nice and loose. I just use my fingers to back off the adjustment screw so I can get this in here. Now these came in really tight. When I tore it apart, they were really loose, and it probably has something to do with that crappy torque wrench that I have. Unfortunately, it's what I have. I have a feeling I may have over-torqued these two. Probably the worst two you could probably over-torque. Unfortunately, what's done is done, and that's what it's going to be. In future projects, I will be purchasing a higher quality torque wrench. Excuse my head in the way, my eyesight sucks. That's what happens when you get old, get used to it. Alright, this is going to be a bit of a bugger, so I'm going to snug it up with the open closed end. Hope that hasn't turned too much. Just going to snug it up because I'm trying to fiddle with it with improper tools. And I did back off a bit because I'm using improper tools. It's a little fiddly than it needs to be. I tried to order the adjustment tool for this head. There is a special tool from Arctic Cat. Unfortunately, wow. Unfortunately, the dealer that is closest to me, which isn't close to me, didn't even know what I was talking about. Kind of a good sign for you folks thinking about buying Arctic Cats. They were completely mystified when I asked them for the valve adjustment tool. They didn't even know what that was. And when they went through the book of parts, they showed me valve stem tools for tires, and I'm trying to explain to them that is not what I'm looking for, but it was too much to ask. So here I am, some redneck engineering, even though I don't know if I really classify as a redneck, but I'll take it as a compliment if I am. This is going to be difficult on the exhaust valves, trying to do this. It would certainly be a lot easier with the right tools. I suppose if I was that way motivated, I could order them from Amazon. But for all intents and purposes. Okay, nice and snug on 1 mil. And for sake of argument, again, I will try the 0.13 mil and the 0.8 to make sure I'm within spec. So it's probably going to be tight here. You watch. Nope, good. A little bit snug. Slid right in there. So we'll go 0.13, which is 0.01 mil over. See if it goes in. I'm hoping it doesn't. Lightning in the background there. Yeah, so the 0.3 really doesn't go in without damaging the tool. So I think we're good. So that's the intake side. Before I drop any more crap in there, let's button up this side. An interesting point is the two rocker covers, inspection covers, are a different shape. On the intake, it's here and here. On the exhaust, this one's a bit lower. On this particular engine anyways. Again, we're talking Chinese engineering here, so who knows. Oh, it's really raining out there. So I'm not going to use that torque wrench on these two. Figure I've done enough damage for one day. And I'm just going to hand tighten them. They have a rubber gasket in it. So we'll just snug those up. Alright, so let's tackle exhaust. So the exhaust side is 0.15 to 0.2 millimeters. Here's a 0.2. Notice I had a little bit of play. I'm going to try and get the 0.15 in there. If it's in there, then I don't think I'm going to mess with them because they're going to be very difficult to get at with the tools that I have. Yeah, I'm going to have to back them off too. So probably what's happened is they were loose when I first started inspecting this machine. I took this cover off, cleaned all the silicone off it, then applied my own silicone. Probably what's happening is this head's fitting a little bit tighter, this cover is fitting a little bit tighter than it did from factory. Again, I'm going to blame the torque wrench for over torquing it, although I was careful not to pull the threads out. I did back them off a little bit and then retighten them by hand. But anyway, so this is probably sitting a little tighter, and as I say, the rockers are attached to the cover, so that means that they're going to be tighter on the valve. And of course, to make things fun, I do have to adjust these two, and with the substandard tools that I have. But that's life. It's a small engine. If we blow it up, we'll put a 700 in this thing and maybe have some actual fun with it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. We don't need it on camera. You've seen it's the same process as this, and you're probably all you're going to see is my hands anyways. I'm going to button it up and we're going to come back. I'm going to throw the battery in it and we're going to fire it up. Actually, no, we're not. I'm going to change the oil in it before I fire it up. Remember what I was saying about I'm a little worried about some of the aluminum filings that might be in there, so I'm going to change the oil and filter and everything before I fire it up again. And we'll see. We'll probably get a couple error codes because I think a few things are disconnected. But we'll listen to it and see how it runs. If it sounds good. It's pretty violent out there right now. This rain's just coming straight down, so I don't think I'll take it for a spin. Maybe I'll jack the rear end up and just kind of run it through the gear and just make sure everything's working before I put all the body panels on. So we'll come back to that when we change the oil, and we'll maybe throw that on camera just for people that don't know how to do it. Okay, well, I got her all back to top end back together. I haven't put the plug back in yet. Should probably do that. Now the exhaust valves were 0.15 to 0.2 millimeters. My feeler gauges were 0.15 or 0.12, so I set it a bit loose on 0.15 and the 0.2 didn't fit in, so I'm right in about middle. I like to go for mid-range. I haven't seen any reports of these valves loosening or tightening on their own. Something that I've heard about the Grizzlies is they tend to tighten up a bit, and I suspect I have that with the Grizzly because it is backfiring and not running too well. So we'll get on to the oil change. I've cleaned up this area around here. This is our check, our dipstick for checking oil level. As you can see, the oil is not actually too bad, and I put it on a clean napkin. There's no metal filings in it. Like I said, our original suspicion was that we threw a rod. Well, we probably would have seen a lot of metal filings in the oil if that was the case, because it chewed up the bearing. So yeah, on this 500, kind of a pretty simple little dipstick there. This is very easy to get at. You don't need to take the bodywork off to do an oil change on these, which is nice. So here's your oil filter. We purchased the K&N one because finding filters for this has been a bit challenging. And our, quote, local guy only carries K&N stuff. I guess they're an okay filter. I think they're better than anything Fram makes, so no harm, no foul. The drain plug on this machine, I haven't done it in a while, but I believe if we go under here, there is a hole right here. Hopefully you can see it. And, nope, wrong one. Aha, there it is. I knew it was on the other side. So this is rather convenient. Again, the Grizzly is not quite as easy to change oil on. So I will say that they've made it fairly simple to maintain. So here's our drain plug. You'll want to make sure you get all the mud and crap cleaned up around here before you open that up. As you can see, I have power washed this machine before I started this project, but there's still a fair bit of country left on it. So I'll probably power wash it again before I put all the body work on. We'll see where that goes. So I'm gonna we'll set the camera down, get my pan, and I'm gonna open this up and we'll see what kind of oil comes out of it. Like I said, on the dipstick it looks pretty clean. It's not burnt up. This machine has very low mileage. A lot of people probably haven't even changed the oil in a machine that has 800 kilometers on it. I believe that's somewhere around 550 miles, somewhere in there. So yeah, a lot of people are probably still running the original oil. This one's had 2 oil changes. Like I said, I do the oil changes. I try to do it every year. I think I missed a little while ago. This year I've been kind of slacking off, so it hasn't been done yet this year. Regardless of the mileage, I try to do it every spring. My machine gets pretty heavily beat on with plowing through the winter, so I'll change the diff fluid and the oil in the spring. We don't do a tremendous amount of mileage, so once a year is more than enough. The oil's usually pretty clean, even when I change it in the spring. So anyway, so I'll set the camera up here. We'll get the pan and we'll take a look at what comes out of this mess. Okay, here we go. Yeah, I know. I was going to clean this off, but I didn't. Also a good idea to replace this crush washer. I did last time. I didn't remember doing that. I'm not going to do it this time because I forgot to grab one. Alright. And here we go. So, kind of a maple syrup color, but definitely not black. So, I think it's pretty safe to say we picked a good time to change the oil. This ain't so pretty. It could just be wet clutch material. But this doesn't look good to me. As clean as the oil is. It's definitely some very fine metallic powder in there. Again, could be wet clutch. Could be wet clutch material. But what we're going to do is we're going to change oil in it. Like I said, I did pour clean oil down through the case. And so we're just going to drain it all out and hope for the best. I really am not looking forward to tearing this engine apart. Don't much care for it. Unfortunately, I'm not an Arctic Cat fan, but it is what it is. And we'll see what happens when I pull the oil out of that Grizzly, which has about twice as much mileage on it, and 3 times the amount of abuse that this thing even gets close to seeing. So I think she'll go all right. While that's draining, take the dipstick out just to hopefully drain it out a little bit faster. Another weird thing that I do when I'm doing oil changes, and I'm sure I'm the only one that does it, I'll pour a little bit of fresh oil into the engine before I put the drain plug in, and then I'll let that, not very much, maybe a quarter of a cup, I'll let that oil drain out of the case. My theory is that it'll wash out any old oil that's still sitting in the bottom of the case and the little crevices and stuff. Probably completely false, but I just do it for the sake of doing it. Peace of mind, I guess. I don't know, because I'm weird. And most of my friends would agree to that. Alright, so let's try and take this off. I was just cleaning that plug off. I'm not feeling any hard bits of metal, but you could definitely see some stuff there, so I'm just hoping it's clutch material. Very, very pasty. What could have happened is that the aluminum that was damaged by that decompression lobe could have gotten into the bearing journals. Hoping the oil system in this thing's better than that, and it went through the oil filter before going to the cam journal or to the crank journals. But who knows? I mean, it is what it is. There's a reason this machine costs 5,000 Canadian, and a Grizzly is closer to about 12,000. I guess you do get what you pay for. Alright, so that came off pretty easy. I was the one that put it on. So as you can see, I didn't need a bunch of tools to pull it off. If your oil filters are that hard to get them off, you're putting them on too tight, buddy. You don't need to show anybody how strong you are. Just tighten them up, lube the O-ring there, and you shouldn't have any issues. Unless, of course, that oil filter's been on there for 30 years, and then sometimes they can be a bugger to get off. I had GSXR 1000 many years ago, and the first time I took that oil filter off, it was a struggle. I probably spent an hour and a half trying to get that thing off. They had it on so tight. It should never be that tight. So there we go. I'm going to let this engine drip a bit. I'm going to pour a little fresh oil down into the fill tube, because that's just the way I am. Alrighty, so here we are, we're back again. I managed to run into town the other day and pick up filters for both machines. I got the Napa Gold one. A lot of people swear by them. This is a 1359 for this machine. Again, it's an Arctic Cat 500 Core, I guess, 2012. I believe it's a 2012. But here you have the Napa Gold on the left and the K&N on the right. And I have to admit, the K&M certainly seems to be a far more robust filter. Bigger body. But I'm told it's the right one, so we'll see how it fits. The threads appear to be the same, but the K&N one definitely seems to be a wider body. Could perhaps be that I got the wrong one. I'm actually just going to go and do a cross-reference on these two and make sure they are the same filter, because I don't know about you, but that doesn't look right to me. Perhaps that K&N one is worth the extra bucks. So let me go look it up and we'll see. Alright, so I did a cross-reference check. Both the filters do cross to each other, so that'll be a lesson to anybody that's thinking about it. I'm not endorsing either one, but it does seem to me that the K&N one is not only a larger filter, but this seems to be a stronger body on it, thicker material. Again, though, this is what I have, and I live way too far away from the shop to make any changes to that idea. So I've put oil in there. It's about half full of oil, fresh oil. I've put oil around the rubber ring, and usually what happens, most of the oil that I've put in there is going to dump out, but I've made the effort, and I can never get them to thread on straight on the first try. There we go. So if we're fast enough, it'll stay inside. So again, hand tighten them. I'm a skinny dude, so I put them on as tight as I can physically get them. But you average guys and the bigger guys out there, for Christ's sakes, don't wrench them on there as tight as you can get them. There you go. It is completely unnecessary. So I'm going to go put the drain plug back in. The fresh oil has stopped draining out, so we're good there. So I'll put the plug back in. Okay. That was actually a piece of the silicone that peeled off from the valve cover. So it must have went down the tiny timing chain cavity and came right out the oil plug. So seems my idea of washing that area out seems to have worked as intended. Right. And again, this is just threaded into aluminum, so don't be stupid like me and over tighten it like I did with the valve cover screws, because I'm a dummy. Okay. Ow! That hurt too. Right. Again, you don't need to over tighten that. So there is a torque spec for that bolt for the drain plug. I'm too lazy to look it up, and my torque wrench sucks anyway, so it is what it is. As you can see, the oil going in isn't much dirtier than the oil that came out. There's about 2 liters of oil in this jug. I believe this holds to like 2.7 liters. And in fact, I am going to go look right now, see what capacity is on that. So the oil capacity with oil change with filter is 2.4 liters. Total oil capacity is 2.85. So even when you're doing an oil change on this thing, they're estimating about 400 milliliters of oil left in there. Like I said, this is about 2 liters of oil here, so I'm using the Rotella T6. A lot of people swear by it. Other people say it's crap. Not had issues with it. I do notice, and it's probably in my head, more valve train noise with this than I do with like modal. I used to use modal a lot, 5100, because it smells like bananas. It's good stuff. But again, I'm pretty rural, so trying to get some of that stuff is rather difficult. Lots of diesel engines around here though, so the Rotella is easy to find. Use whatever oil works for you, unless you really like spending hours on forums and reading all of the debates on different types of oils. I used to do that when I was into bikes, but I got family now, so you could quite literally read that stuff for, well, forever. The oil debates just never seem to end. So let me grab my light here. I wasn't 100% sure how much oil was in that. But I got a fair bit more to go yet. Worst case scenario, I gotta drain a little bit out. Probably not a bad thing at this point. So we're getting close to firing this thing up. See if she'll run. See what I screwed up. Hear lots of clanging, clanking, and banging, and I know I screwed up. Like I say, not a mechanic. So yeah, I thought there was about 2 oil liters left in here, and it looks like I was about right. Fill, fill, fill. You don't want to overfill these. Although the Subaru, there's a lot of thermal expansion in the Subaru, so when you measure it hot, it actually measures a lot higher. These ATVs don't seem to do that. You measure them hot, you don't measure higher than their actual cold. So I keep it simple, so don't overfill it. There's no need to. Make sure you're up to the top. Right, so that's the last of that jug. Yep, that works. Yeah. Let's see here. Oh yeah. Just on the bottom of the dipstick there. Looks good. Now the guy that owns this machine, he swears by this oil additive, fuel additive crap, miracle juice. I don't buy it. I think most of that stuff is junk. The only, woohoo, oil everywhere. That was fun. Really, the only thing I rely on is a good fuel stabilizer for the winter. Short of that, the rest of it's completely unnecessary and a con. Again, your mileage may vary, but the riding lawnmower I showed you earlier, again, it's over 20 years old. I actually flooded it, not thinking, because the needle and seat stuck, weren't sealing properly, so it actually flooded the cylinder. I drained the cylinder out, threw the spark plug in it, not thinking. But the crankcase was also full of gas. Typically that would do a tremendous amount of damage to pretty much everything in there, because it breaks down the oil in the crankcase. As soon as I realized my error, I shut her down, changed the oil. That was 3 years ago, and it still does not burn a drop of oil. I never have to add oil through the season. And it's just, again, I use whatever oil I have handy, and I change it on a regular basis. No magical mystery additives needed. And there we go. We're full. I don't know if you can see it. Maybe just a tiny bit over full, but it should be okay. Again, the whole top end is dry, so I put a little bit of oil on the cams and journals and the cam bearings, knowing that I had dried it all out. So if it's a little over full, it should be good. So what I'll do now, and what will happen, it is over full. Again, I didn't fill the oil filter, so we're going to run the engine. We're at that point now where we're going to fire it up. That'll fill the oil filter and everything else that's drained out of it. So we might find this a little bit low after it's been running for a minute or two. So we'll add a bit more, and that's usually what I find when I do this kind of thing. So I'm going to shut you down here. I'm going to clean up the mess of oil I spilt everywhere, and I'm going to temporarily attach the battery, and we're going to try and start this thing and see what blows up. So bear with me. Okay, so got all the relevant stuff in place, putting it in park. I had some challenges with this battery. So this is a genuine Arctic Cat battery. Got two little captured nuts inside the posts, and these thread into them. The screws aren't long enough to catch the captured nut when they're all the way down, so I ended up using like a little pick and an Allen key to hold the nut up while I tried to thread these in. It was a real bugger. The other thing is this relay here. I noticed both these bolts were loose, so I tightened those down. You know, I've made enough mistakes here, so I can't poop on anybody else's mistakes, but just stuff that I kind of caught as I was going over it all. Tighten that down, oil plugs in, batteries in. Don't think I had to unplug any sensors or anything on the airbox, but we'll go take a look at it. So it should fire up. I had a rag stuffed in the intake. I've pulled it out since, just keep shit from dropping in there. Yeah, there's no plugs in. Nothing on the airbox, so we're good. Intake tube. No, we're good. Okay. So, here we go. Clank clank time. Let's see what happens. No juice. Well, there we go. Like Musty would say, wah wah. I gotta figure out what I did wrong here. Something's stopping power from going through. Flow switch is on. I got no juice. I did charge that battery, so the battery is good. But I will, oh, look at that. Even though I seem to have tightened it down, apparently not enough. So maybe I'm not getting it around. Wah, wah. So let's go tighten it down and see what we get. No, still nothing. Well, how about that? Alright, so everybody's nice and tight. That's good. No reason for no power. So first thing I'll do is break out the old multimeter, make sure I got 12 volts on the battery. My charger said it was full and happy to go, so that's kind of strange. Trying to think of anything else I've disconnected. Nope. Maybe the battery's dead. That would be very odd. Well, not entirely. You know what? It's a possibility. I left the key in the ignition. There's a possibility I left it on. So, find my multimeter down here. And my second tool bit of the kit. Multimeter. Okay, see what you see. Oh, that's not working. Nope. That didn't work so well. Well, I got 12.6 volts. I got juice. Alright. My troubles lie elsewhere. I'll go through the harnesses, see if I've unplugged something. Entirely possible. And it could be some kind of stupid safety switch I wasn't paying attention to. It could be the coil wire that we talked about earlier that I left dangling. I will find the problem and report back. Alright, found my problem. Missed a wire. Didn't want to bore you with the search here. I figured I'd miss something. So on the battery terminal, you got your main battery power and then your auxiliary wire. When I put the cover on to have somewhere to set the battery, I accidentally left it underneath the cover here. I guess I'm kind of lucky it didn't short to ground. I don't imagine there's any juice on there. It would have worked anyways. One thing you might want to note about these Arctic Cats too is This battery literally just sits in there. There's nothing holding it. They put this little piece of foam in here. I guess it's supposed to wedge in there, but as you can see, doesn't do shit. It is what it is. So we'll connect this up and commence testing startup again. Hopefully I haven't missed anything else. Maybe I left some bolts in here or something. Who knows? Alright. So here you go. Here we go. Screw into here, into the terminal. Doesn't do nothing. So what I have to do, there, you'll see the captured nut that's in there. I've got a little pick. Let's try and lift this nut up and get it to line up. Jeez. So it's just one of them funny things. All manufacturers have their quirks. And on the list of quirks, this is not that big a deal. Sorry, I'm moving around a lot here, but I'm just trying to get this sucker to line up. As you can tell, I'm starting to get a little frustrated with some of the silliness. This cold's kind of wearing me down a bit. Shortening my patience, as it were. Alright. So there she goes. I got her lined up. It's somewhat fidgety. Another kind of funny thing to notice, this screw is a number 3 Phillips. This screw is a number 2 Phillips. Just thought that was kind of unique, as it were. Imagine they're both probably 10mm sockets, but I'll tighten them down later. Alright, so give me some spark. Ooh, look at that. So we got nothing on the intake. Air box goes in there. This little tubey over here goes in. This little dealy here. So, if I remember right, it goes like so. Not really a lot holding it in place, is there? So, are you ready for the clack clack? Here we go. Doing park. Good catch, eh? Wow. Alright. Idling a little funny. Definitely much quieter. Like I said, it was knocking really bad. Let's give her a little rev. Whoa. Got her now. So, there's a lesson learned. That clutch assembly is held in by lots of goodness. So, oh shit. Looks like I have to pull that bearing out and press this back in. Lesson learned. I'm going to do some cleaning. So all you YouTube people, don't do that. Make sure you have the housing and everything put together so you don't press this little bugger out. You got to figure out how to get it back in. Alright, so that little piece just presses in. It pressed in, no problem. What I'm going to do now is to put the drive assembly on before I try to restart it again. I'm going to have to check the oil again. Remember how I said we'll probably lose a little bit of oil? Yeah, well, I lost a little bit of oil. So anyways, put the belt on. You can drive it. Take a cover plate screw. It goes in one of these holes. There we go. That's a bit of a trick. So try not to touch it. So you take one of these cover screws, you drive it in, spreads the sheaves so you can get the belt in. I'll do it this way. It's a bit of a bugger. It's still going to spread as far as I'd like it to. There we go. Okay, that's in there. I cleaned all the oil out of here, at least as much as I could. I'll probably have to come back with some brake cleaner. Clean this out a little bit better, but I just want to get it running for now. So we got that in. Again, you want to keep the face of these sheaves oil free, obviously. They're a little bit resistant, but I wouldn't chance it. One thing you want to remember when you're messing with these clutches, this piece here slides in and out. You want to make sure you hold this in, otherwise all the weights will fall out, and then you got to tear it all apart. On this machine it's pretty easy. On the Grizzly, this is a sealed unit that's greased, and it's a bit more of a pain in the backside to do. So, inside I just press that fitting right in. There you go. Okay. Drive the nut in. This has blue Loctite on it. I'm just going to drive it in with the impact driver. You probably only saw my knee, didn't you? 27 mil. There's a torque rating for these. It's quite high. I don't know what it is. Okay. Get this out. Spin it around a little bit. Yeah, tight. Alright, let's try this again. See if any oil comes out of her. That was pretty silly of me. I did that on the Grizzly once too. It actually can put a lot of stress on the crank without this end bearing on here. But for the sake of argument, I just want to get it running. So I'm not following the rules. If you don't get caught up in that spinny thing there. This belt has direction on it. There's the direction arrows there. Don't ever stick your fingers in there, but you see the arrows are pointing that way. Direction of rotation. Okay, I think we're good. I'll let it settle for a minute. We'll check the oil again, and I think it's time to piece this old girl back together and hit the trails once again. So that's about it. Putting the plastics and everything on, I think anybody could figure it out because I did. So that means anybody could figure it out. The air box, everything. I gotta clean the air filter, but I'm waiting for the cleaning kit to come out or come in. I should have it in the next couple of days. I don't think anybody needs to see that. The next project will be that, so hopefully maybe later this week I can start screwing that machine up and make all the mistakes that I made on this one. Until then, if you have any questions, or if you even watch this, make some comments, let me know, and I'll see if I can't answer them for you, or if you just want to make fun of my lack of skill, you can do that too. I don't mind. I can take it. Anyways, have a good one.